So, good evening, everybody. It's wonderful to see your faces and to know that you're out there working for this great university. So, thank you so much, Mark. Thank you for that wonderful prayer. Um, Honestly, I hardly know how to begin or where to begin. As you might imagine, this has been a year like no other. Speaking with my colleagues across the country, presidents, I have to say that everybody remarks that they have never seen a year like this before, and they never expect to see a similar one again. Um, Oddly enough, we've forgotten now that we started the year with a flood, and then we went into a series of difficulties, the peak of which was the COVID, when we had to close the university virtually in March. Um, since that time, we have been buffeted about by one emergency after another. And so I want you all to feel how it must be for our students. The kind of evil that they've suffered this year, the kind of uncertainty that they face because of the economic situation with their families, the kind of hurt they feel because of police uh, violence against African Americans, the kind of despair they feel about what their future might be. So every day, in spite of everything that we're dealing with, I try to remember where our students are, how a young person must feel in the midst of all of this. Because as older people, we've been through certain tests over time. And we know that we always emerge from them with having learned a lot and being stronger for it. Young people don't necessarily know that. And so I think about them every day. And I think about ways in which we can give them encouragement. I want you to think about that also. Whatever we do, our students must come first, in my view. So I've been given a series of questions, and I'll try to make my way through them. I can't possibly be complete because honestly, so much is happening that the detail would be mind-bending for you, frankly. I'm going to try to tell you a little bit about where we are and what we're trying to do to keep people safe, open up the campus again, to make sure that as we go forward, we will not fail our students and we will not fail our mission. As you might imagine, we're reopening the campus recently. We had brought back in a staged way the employees. Just as we got to the end of that phasing with the last group of employees back, we suddenly had to shut down again because of the surge here in Houston. We sent employees, everybody who could work from home, we sent employees home. And we are still minimally open, which means that offices are doing their work, they're available, somebody is staffing, but it's minimal staffing at this point. And we're hoping that by the time we begin to prepare for students to arrive in August, we're going to be able to come back. But I must tell you, honestly, I'm quite nervous about that. Because if the surge continues and grows, I think we're going to be asking questions about whether or not we can, in fact, bring students back in the fall. I'm going to come back to that later, the consequences of making a decision like that if we have to make it. But for now, I'm just going to tell you about some of the things we're doing to make it safe for the students. First of all, we have gone through the campus, analyzed it very carefully, determined how much spacing we can do given the number of students we have and the number of employees we have. And so we focused on posting occupancy ratings, giving guidance on physical distancing. You'll see signs on the floor telling people how far apart they must remain. We have a crew that comes in to sanitize sanitize nightly. We have distributed sanitizing equipment and PPE to employees. We do the same thing for students when they arrive, and we require face masks. And the signage requiring face masks is ever present across campus. You'll see it. In fact, when you cross over into the campus, there are prominent signs saying face masks are required. Now, we check with the lawyers. You know that face masks are very controversial. We checked with the lawyers to determine whether or not we could, in fact, require face masks and how much authority we had if individuals refuse to wear face masks. We are told that we are able to take disciplinary action against students. We're even able to separate them from the university if, after a warning about a face mask, they refuse to wear a face mask. And of course, we can discipline employees or separate employees if they refuse to wear a face mask. So we believe we have the ability to enforce face mask wearing on the campus, unlike outside of the campus where cities are finding it very hard to do. We probably can do a much better job of that. We will still move as many business operations online and virtually as we can to decrowd the campus. But obviously, a certain number of people have to be on site when our students come back to make sure that we can monitor student activities carefully. Obviously, with students returning, there's the problem of their interest in socializing and the fact that they might be inclined to hold large gatherings, which we absolutely cannot have. And so we've developed procedures for organizing and managing large events so that we adhere to CDC guidelines. In terms of athletics, we're creating a protocol for athletic game day management to adhere to the CDC. Right now, SWAC has not told us what we're going to do about athletics. Most of the time, we continue to plan, although we don't have definitive word in some instances from the system, from the state, or from our athletic conference about what we're actually going to be able to do. We have to make a decision very soon about the Labor Day Classic. I have been contacted by the interim president of Texas Southern. I'm sure that that game will not be held, however. Simply coming up too soon, and given what we're learning about the spread of the disease, it's not going to be feasible for us to be able to hold the class. We're doing everything in terms of adjusting schedules, including our transportation schedule and the route to accommodate movement restrictions. And also in terms of food service, we are obviously creating guidelines for how we can serve a student population. Now, we have about 4,400 units on the campus, and we're very lucky. Most campuses have conventional dorm rooms. Well, we have a huge number of suites, which means that the students have individual rooms, and they don't have bathrooms on the hallway. And so we have a lot more control, actually, on the campus because of the recent nature of our residency. And we believe that we can provide a much safer campus with students on campus than most universities can. We have the Student Affairs Office has organized itself for the kind of monitoring that's necessary if we have students living back on campus. As I said, we are distributing cloth face masks to each student. We are placing sanitizing stations throughout the campus. I'm sure you've seen these. They've appeared everywhere now. We are posting sneeze guards in offices and if anywhere where a person has to talk across a desk to someone. And just as in the offices, we have cleaning protocols for both residences and for also involved in training people. So we're going to have training for all students in terms of safety measures, and we have a certification process. Now, the certification process is one where employees are required to certify that they have not been in contact with anyone who is known to have the COVID-19 virus. Um, they must certify that they are symptom free. They must sign that document. If it turns out that they are not disclosing properly their movement and their contact, they can be dismissed. They can be terminated if they fail to disclose properly these contacts. We are doing social media education constantly, preparing the students for what they're going to face when they return. When they move in, we're going to have staggered move-in and out of residences to avoid physical contact. We have reserved a certain number of spaces. I've forgotten the number, but I think it's something like 140 spaces for quarantine and isolation. These are rooms that we will send students to if they contract the virus, or if they've been in contact with someone with the virus and they have to be quarantined or isolated. We are adjusting the room check protocol to help student efforts to maintain sanitized rooms. We're posting in the rooms, or in the residences, space utilization guidelines, and we have created a visitation protocol. And one aspect of the visitation protocol is students may not have anyone visit them from off the campus. I think it's going to be very, very hard to enforce, but that's the rule. So I can stop there about the preparations and see if you have questions, or I can go on, Kim, with my presentation and get questions at the end. What do you prefer?
Please continue.
Continue. Okay. All right. Online learning. Well, this is a very complicated topic, I must say, but as you know, we were completely online during the summer. However, when we return in the fall, we're currently planning both online, hybrid, and face-to-face instruction. Basically, we do not have enough space on our campus to accommodate the spacing necessary for the number of students that we have. And so we can't do fully face-to-face instruction. It's physically impossible to do. And so what we are doing is basically what other universities are electing to do, and that is we're trying to give students a total experience that includes some online, some combination of online and face-to-face, and then some courses, by virtue of their size, would actually be face-to-face. Now, it's amazing what universities are doing to try to figure this out. Rice University announced this week that they were putting up tents on the campus. The whole class is outside. Because if it happens, outside activity is safer than inside activity. And so many are going to tents for outside classes. We are investigating the possibility of adding temporary buildings on campus to be able to afford us more spacing. We haven't made a definite decision on that yet, but because it's complicated to do that. But I would guess that if we do aim to have a full year of study on the part of our students, we will have to go to some alternatives like that, because we cannot mount enough classes for our students unless we go to some other site for instruction. We are concerned, obviously, about the virtual aspect of education. a uniformly good experience with online instruction in the spring. We have lots of complaints from students that they don't learn as well through that medium, that they don't have the Wi-Fi access to make it smooth enough for them, that they've had difficulty not having access to their faculty in person to get some additional assistance that they may need. We just have a host of complaints about online education. And so one of the things that we've tried to do to ameliorate that for the fall is to provide better coverage. We're using some of our CARES Act funding to hire more instructors, to hire graduate assistants to help with some of the courses, and to give students more equipment. So we have bought a lot of laptops and have numerous kiosks on campus where students can check out equipment to use for online courses. So we have 6 laptop kiosks across the campus with 180 computers to check out. We have long-term checkout possible for students as well. We have a new virtual desktop support for access to software. And of course, we are using Canvas, the Canvas platform with Zoom integration to make the courses more effective. There are, just to give you a little bit of information about the terminology being used across universities today. We have F2F, which is, of course, taught in the traditional format, face-to-face. We have hybrid, which is obviously a mix of face-to-face and online. And then we have fully online. In the online category, we have synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous indicates a course taught online that happens in real time. So you're in a course, your instructor is teaching the course, and it is real time. Asynchronous is a course taught online that is not in real time, so the student and instructor are simply not online at the same time. It provides for, obviously, a different experience. So synchronous and asynchronous, F2F, online, hybrid. There are other areas of concern for us with our students, obviously. We are moving a lot of services online, health and counseling, including telemed and telecounseling, have become very big during COVID, as you all probably know. We have a Hilltop Reserve for both emergency funding, for food, for clothing, for services, and for case management. And we're creating a student ambassadors program to help students make adjustments to COVID-related changes. So those are some of the things that we're doing to prepare our students. There was a question about CARES Act funding. Let me say a word about that. I hope you're aware that when the CARES Act was enacted, the first part of the CARES Act provided financial aid support for students across the spectrum of institutions. And that was used to help students who needed additional funding to continue their education. And so we received a sum of money for that purpose in the first part of the CARES Act. But it was a pretty modest sum of money by our standards, given our students' needs. And so we had between $6 and $7 billion for that purpose. We set up to give out that aid. Our students didn't understand fully when it started that this was aid that came with constraints. They thought that everybody $1,000 no matter what. In fact, this is financial aid under government guidelines. And so, although it was more lenient in some respects than traditional financial aid, it still required it to have a FAFSA on file, and then the guidelines as to what qualified for support. And many of the students filled out the application for support under the CARES Act and mentioned things that were ineligible for support. So, for example, well-meaning students who had families who were in dire straits might have mentioned that they needed money because their family was in need of additional support. Well, that didn't qualify them for CARES. And so one of the things I think we did inadequately was to explain carefully to students that what they put on the application could render them ineligible for CARES Act funding. And so we got a fair number of complaints from students about a low amount of funding that they got because they all expected $1,000 from the CARES Act funding, and so on. But fortunately, we are able to give CARES Act funding in three parts. The first part was obviously for the spring. The second part is for the summer, 1 and 2. The next part is for the fall. The big news is that we got a tremendous amount of money for the second part of the CARES Act, which went to minority serving institutions. There, we got an astounding $29 million. And that will help go a long way toward helping our students, I think, stay in school, because we'll be able to give them additional financial aid beyond what they would normally have access to. And so students have been packaged for the fall. We still have some money to give out for the summer, but students will be packaged for the fall. But they also allowed us to use the CARES Act in the second wave for a variety of things. And that's how we were able to afford supplying these additional computers for students, and the technical support for students, and the additional instruction for students through the CARES Act. So again, among the institutions that received CARES Act funding Part 2, we were number 6 on the list nationally in terms of the amount of money that we got, based on our profile, number of students we had, and so forth. So the CARES Act funding was extraordinary help to us, and I hope to our students. But even though it was a big help, we still are hearing from students that they don't know whether or not they will be able to come back in the fall. So let me deal with enrollment for just very briefly. I believe that we might possibly see a seismic shift in higher education following the COVID pandemic. I say seismic because there's never been a time before where universities have universally been forced to move to online instruction. For the most part, universities have resisted online, and now they've been forced to do it. Because they've been forced to do it, I don't think it'll be possible to go back and have a wholly face-to-face model henceforth. I doubt very seriously that most universities will go back to that. That's the first factor to me. Second factor is that because of this shift in the composition of instruction, many parents and students are asking about the pricing structure of higher education. They do not wish to pay full tuition anymore. They are getting any portion of their education virtually. There is a class action lawsuit filed to recover money from, not against Prairie per se, but class action lawsuit is going to have implications if the plaintiffs succeed. It will have implications for all of us. So the reasoning goes something like this: the pricing structure of tuition rests on a comprehensive array of services in addition to instruction. And when students had to go online and leave campus to go online, a number of things should have happened. Their money should have been refunded to them for housing, for having no longer the ability to live in housing. Their tuition should have been refunded to them in large part because the cost of online instruction is very different from face-to-face instruction, or that's the argument. So what we're hearing already on a daily basis from students is that if there is a part of their instruction that is online, they feel they should not have to pay full tuition. This has to be adjudicated, as you know, and once it's adjudicated, the consequences for us and for other universities could be quite severe. So let's say that a formula is derived to give students money back because of their partly virtual instruction. That means that we would certainly have to downsize staff and faculty as a consequence of that. Never mind the fact we'd have courses, but probably compensation would be different, and we might lose people on the basis of having to downsize in order to make in order to run the university. So when I say that it could be seismic, if all of this follows through, it could change the nature of the university in quite substantial ways. And if legally we are obligated to return funds to students, it will mean a big hit to the budget. Now, let me talk about the budget. We've already learned from the state that we're going to have to make it. So some time ago, I instituted a hiring freeze, anticipating that we were going to have to make severe cuts in the budget and to try to forestall the possibility of having to lay people off. And so that hiring freeze is in force right now. We have not yet started layoffs, but many universities have furloughed employees or begun layoffs. But we are planning for at least a 7% reduction from the state. It could go as high as 15%. And if it went as high as 15%, we would have to deal with that as well. We won't know for a while how much will be forced to cut. But I will tell you that I recently went onto the Federal Reserve Board, and one of the things that we, of course, hear about a good deal on the Federal Reserve is the forecast of the economic picture going forward. It's pretty bad. What's being anticipated right now? The prospect for the state to recover the revenue shortfall from the spring and the summer doesn't look good, frankly. The prospect for Texas is not particularly good given our oil and gas economy, as well as other aspects of our particular economy here in Texas. And so we're about to go through a very hard time in universities that are state universities. Although I have to say, I have to add that all universities are facing this, and it's not just state universities. I would say we are a tad better off than our private counterparts because they're about to face a very deep recession, and they don't have a state budget to shore them up. So while it's going to be bad, it's not going to be as bad for us as it is for our private counterparts. Some universities will not survive this period, and this is bad for us in this sector, HBCUs, because there will not be, in some instances, any place for them to go to survive in the kind of economy that we will have for the next year or two at least. I hate to give this bad news. Tim, should we talk about something more hopeful? I think just a couple of things that are trending upward, let's say. First of all, we talked recently about the prospect of Prairie playing a leading role in regard to helping the country and the state deal with issues of race and justice. There has been tremendous response from the corporate sector, from governmental sector, from the private sector in response to our suggestion that we are prepared to do that. I met with the Black Caucus of the Texas legislature recently. They came to us and asked that we create a policy document for them to work through the legislature this year in regard to several issues. The health and education disparities that the Black community faces, the criminal justice issues that are so dire in this moment, and the deep divisions in the country over the issue of race. So a group of us have undertaken a project to deliver a policy document to the state legislature and to the governor around these issues, recommending a series of measures that the state can take. But I have to say at the same time, nationally, we've been approached about doing this as well. And so I believe coming out of this, if we can get the center approved by the region and by the coordinating board, I believe we'll come out of this with a really almost a branding boon, because the Center for Race and Justice will help us tell the story about our legacy as a university, about our mission and how relevant it is today, and about the value we can add to the country as an institution. And that's very exciting. So why don't I stop on that note, and you can tell me what you'd like to do.
I do have a question here. I'm on the chat feature. Will the university hire additional medical staff to assist with COVID? Currently, my knowledge, there's only one medical doctor at Prairie Clinic at Owen Franklin. Has that been thought about?
It's been thought about, and we have used some of the COVID funds to enhance what we're able to do in the health center. One of the great advantages that we have, as you know, is that we're part of a system, and the system is actually helping us a good deal with dealing with the issue of health in this moment, because we are all working together, as it were, to try to solve these problems. And so the system has brought us, for example, solutions on contact tracing. They brought to us solutions on PPE. They brought to us resources in terms of how to deal with myriad issues, because they have all of the expertise. And they have been at the ready and helping us constantly, I must say. So we do not have a full-scale health center, as you know. And at this juncture, we don't have the resources to have a much expanded one. But we do have the ability to have the resources needed to get help for our students when that is required. And by the way, as I said, we are bringing in people on a part-time basis in some instances, and we are getting individuals who have the requisite expertise be able to give guidance when that is required. Tim Sams is over health, and so he is very much responsive to the issue of our students having adequate health coverage in this COVID environment. I should also say we have had a total of over 40 um, individuals infected with COVID.
Students or faculty staff?
That's students, faculty, and staff. Very few students, mostly staff, and so, but no unit has been wholly shut down because of it. The police department has had the largest group affected, and the number there was a police car in which I think 4 police officers were riding, and all of them went out at the same time, and everybody they were in contact with had to be quarantined. But that was the most dramatic result. However, during the surge, within the last week, I believe I have announced the largest number of COVID cases that we've had. And what you can see on the web, on the home page, is a listing of the cases that we have. Because as you know, we're obligated to inform people when we have a case. And so, you can find that on the website. And it is I'm very hastened by the recent activity because it's pretty clear that the cases that we're in the middle of a spread, and that there are many more cases of staff. Now, these staff happen not to be on campus because I sent everybody back home when the surge occurred. But we still have to report that they have tested positive because they are employees of the university.
Thank you. Moving on to instruction. Has anything been decided or discussed regarding science laboratory studies, and yet needing it to be in a virtual format?
Yes, that's something that I laugh because there are lots of discussions about that, as you might imagine, and a lot of email traffic about it. There's been a furious exchange coming from the nursing college over clinical training. For example, the scientists, the engineers have all been working to make sure that there's a way to deal with the laboratory situation. But as you know, it's very difficult to solve that. But one of the great things about this situation is that everybody shares it. It's not unique to us, so we don't have to solve it alone. Every university is dealing with this, so every time we learn of something that we can use, it saves time. It improves on what we're doing, and so the number of meetings that we have on a weekly basis with all of our colleagues across the system talking about all of these issues. What are you doing at Charleston? What are you doing at the flagship campus? How can we transfer that to Prairie View? That's been quite important, I would say. But it will not be the same. And one of the things we should not promise our students is that life will be the same for them. It will not be the same. Will it be so deleterious to them that they will not be able to succeed when they complete their studies here? No. I think we have been overly dramatic in some regards in talking about the deficits that our students might have as a consequence of COVID. I just don't buy that for a second. Will it be the same? No. Will some ground need to be recovered? Yes. But you all know this from your own experiences, that you can drop out school and you can come back, right? You can have a bad instructor and feel that you got nothing out of a class and still succeed. So we know that education can be quite uneven, and these are the kinds of things that can happen. And so I don't worry that our students won't be able to be successful. But the warriors are definitely concerned. And many of our students are in that category of warriors. Oh my goodness, you mean to say that this course is not going to be the same as what it was when the class before me had it? What am I going to do? So we spend a lot of time trying to reassure parents and students about the fact that things are different, but also trying to persuade them that one of the things we learn as human beings when circumstances change, to learn how to cope with those and to go to alternatives, to be adaptable, and that's one of the things I'm watching very closely with the staff and the faculty right now, and that is their capacity to become stronger, more agile, as a consequence of what they're having to do right now. Because everybody who is in their accustomed pattern, I think, don't see how easy it is to drift along without having to use every part of your being to answer a challenge. And now they are facing up to that challenge. The other part of this, of course, is the tragic environment today around race. And so in addition to all the things that our students have to deal with academically, instructionally, they're dealing with this issue of systemic racism and the consequence that it has in their lives. And that has come so sharply into focus. It never leaves them. You can't leave them because everybody's talking about it. Hostility, racial hostility is higher. And so they are confronting it. They worry about whether or not they dare get into their car and drive at night. Imagine for a young person what that is doing as well. So I think part of what we have the opportunity to do in education is to see our students through that period safely, and I hope wisely, by teaching them, helping them understand how it came to this. They have to understand the history. They have to be aware of where they come from and what the challenges might be for them in the future. And I think if we don't do a good job of that as an HBCU, we are really failing.
Thank you. I had two additional questions. One is regarding faculty with pre-existing conditions. I know it's a challenge as well in the public school system, but what are you all considering for those faculty members that have pre-existing conditions that are fearful of returning to campus?
Well, we are helped a good deal in this because there are very few things when it comes to personnel issues. There are very few things that we have the freedom to do. Okay, it's all legislated for us. So quite early on, the governor, state, then the system mandated that anyone with pre-existing conditions could not be required to work on site. So they're protected by the state and they're protected by the system, and there's nothing we can do to force them, nor would we want to. There's nothing we can do to force them to come in contact with students, for example, or even to be on campus. To the extent that they can from their residences mount courses, and they want to do that, then that's fine. If they can do that safely, that's fine. But they are protected right now unless the state changes the guidance on this. They don't have. They know that they don't have to worry. Now, I will say though, honestly, the number of people who do not want to be at on campus during COVID is quite significant, and many of them do not have pre-existing conditions. They just don't think it's safe. And so they're raising questions about the options they have. Some have said they may retire. Some have said that if they're forced to come back, they will quit. It's a problem because it's a deadly disease for so many, and especially in our community, that people are concerned enough that they are thinking about their options and saying they are going to decide on their own whether or not it is safe enough for them to return. And that's going to be a factor.
Thank you. And lastly, 803, unless you had more, I think there were two more topics regarding athletics.
Okay.
Right ahead. We have hours. Do you have anything to share about homecoming?
So here is the, I see that a survey was done, and the overwhelming majority of the respondents felt that we should not move to a virtual homecoming, that we definitely should not have an in-person homecoming. The majority felt that it should just be canceled for this year. And so some decision will have to be made about that, and I would love to know what you all think about that, obviously. Would it be safe enough to plan for homecoming given the crowds that we have at homecoming? I don't see how we'd actually do it in person, given COVID. And so the likelihood that we would be able to mount anything that's safe enough to protect the population of Prairie View supporters, I can't imagine how we do it. In terms of the return of athletics, yesterday was the first day of our new athletic director. We have not had a chance to meet yet. SWAC has been meeting. We've been meeting with the presidents of the SWAC institutions. They are reluctant to make a decision about the season because of the TV revenue and the contracts that they have. If they do not honor the contract, they lose a substantial amount of money. And so they're trying to decide what to do about that, and we do not have consensus yet, although there's another meeting coming up next week of the SWAC presidents, and we'll have to finally make a decision about what we're going to do about athletics for the season. Right now, nothing much looks good, honestly. The possibility of protecting our athletes is an issue. We've already decided that our band will not travel at all this year. We will not permit any bands from off campus to come to an athletic contest if we do have a contest, and so forth. So the issue always is large groups of people in contained spaces. Putting young people on a bus to go to a game is something that people regard as irresponsible. And the band has said they will not do it. And so I think that it's very iffy that we'll be able to have any of the traditional contests this year. And that means the Dallas Classic. That means the Labor Day Classic. It may mean that we have a delayed start to the football season if we are able to have a football season. It may mean that we have a contest without. We have a large enough stadium, obviously, realistically that we could probably do the spacing. I'm hopeful because of the size of the stadium that we could probably manage a contest if you can figure out how to keep people from being ill and coming onto a field and interacting with fellow athletes and giving everybody the virus. That's going to be the problem.
And lastly, what as alumni can we do? What can we do to help our alma mater and the students? What are you asking of us? As an association, as individual alums, what can we do?
I think over the time I've worked in higher education, I would say I have never experienced a moment that is as ripe for inflection as this moment. And so I always ask myself at such a moment, what could we do, no matter what the current issues are, no matter what the current problems are, what could we do to push the university to the next level? That's when you make moves, significant moves. In the face of something like this, you take advantage of everything that you have to highlight the university, to tell the story of the university, to win support for the university. So let me tell you what I have noticed that's changed, and then you can determine how you might be able to help. One of the things that's changed significantly is the number of people knocking on our door and saying, we're prepared to invest, we're prepared to help. I've not seen that before. And so I'm thinking that if we can leverage that successfully, we can come out on the other side with something much better than what we had before we started this crisis. And so I'm meeting a lot with CEOs. I'm drafting proposals quite a lot, companies. I'm hearing from individuals asking if they could do something that would be significant for Prairie View. So one of the things I want you to do is to help us tell the story of this university. And I personally don't think that in our communications that we highlight sufficiently the alumni, because what people really want to hear about when they are approaching an institution, they really want to hear about alumni stories. That's the most thing that they want to hear. Because they gauge whether or not Prairie View is a good investment by the alumni stories that they are made aware of. Okay? So I'd love it if you would take on a project of getting us those alumni stories. They are human interest stories, people who made outstanding contributions. They're stories of how Prairie View impacted lives, and so on. What I'd like to do is to develop a publication that is nothing but, or a website, or something that is nothing but a narrative about what Prairie View has accomplished through the individuals that it has educated over time. I think there's a lot that we need to do there, and I think it is linked to our ability to gain support. I'm going to be talking, for example, for you Dallasite. I have a conversation coming up, for example, with the CEO of Texas Institute. And the pitches that we make, it's one thing to go in and say, Prairie View is a wonderful place, educated tens of thousands of people who are very successful and productive and so forth. It's one thing to say that. It's another thing to leave behind a document that says, here's what this institution has done. So I want to do that in a concrete way. And that's the project that I'm thinking about. So a group of you might want to take this on and begin to collect these stories. You might want to advertise it and say to alumni through your own medium. We're looking for compelling stories from Prairie View alumni so that we can tell the story of the university in a much better way. Would you send us your story? I think if we could collect those and do a very powerful publication and keep that ongoing, do an archive that is an ongoing archive, because we still can't find sometimes we don't know who our alumni are. And I encounter people all the time who say, oh yes, I went to Prairie View and I've never heard that before. And yet they're a very successful and famous person, And so I think we've just got to do better there. So that's what number one. Number two, I just think our students are going to be in desperate need of mentoring. People ask me what kind of experience we should be giving our students. And they say, for example, well, why is it that all these universities have very high graduation rates and our graduation rate is so much lower? I tell them about the kind of attention and wraparound services that students get at other universities. Now, these are universities where students come in with all the advantages and they are ready to go and they've had all the coursework they need and so forth. And still, they get all of these wraparound features. So we have to wrap our arms around these students. So I'd like to have a crew that I can send to you, a crew of alumni, to whom I can send particular students. I spend a lot of time on email and talking to individual students who are discouraged or who don't think they can make it, and so forth. And we have a small enough staff that we can't handle all of the students who need that extra attention. I'd love it if alumni had the capacity to be buddies to some of our students who have who need that special thing because they have no one. I say to them, well, can you go to, do you have an aunt? Do you have someone that you can go to? They say no one. So if you were to organize something like that, it would be such a boon to our students because they are many of them are very much in need of that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay?
We can do both of those things.
Good.
One and two. Those are definitely things we can
do. And any other things that you think that you can do, we just need your involvement. We need your attention. We need your time. We need your suggestions. This is a project that is so important to our community. When Rod Kaplan says that African Americans have given up all of their economic gains, all, that means that we might as well be back in the 19th century. Okay? All of our economic gains have been given up. That means we have some very heavy lifting to do. And bringing our community out of the circumstances that we're in right now is going to take that kind of heavy lifting. So it means everybody's got to be involved in order to get it done. And so any hope we can get for our students, because they're going to have to carry that torch, any hope we can get for them, that's all to the good. And naturally, you need to get out the vote. If we don't get that scoundrel out in the fall, the lives of our children will be forever impacted. To have a racist leading this country and being responsible for the welfare of our children is a travesty beyond anything I can say. And so to hear him use slurs in regard to, I mean, I can take it, I could care less, but think what it's doing to our children. We've got to get him out of there. And so I would say making sure we can't do that because we are precluded from being involved in political activity. But you're not. And so sending out messages to our community about the importance of voting in the election, that's very important. Nobody gets to sit on the sidelines.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I note the time at 8:17. Thank you, President Simmons.
Thank you. Thank you. And
have,
thank you for all your help.
You have enlightened us greatly. Thank you so much. We are going to end tonight's conference with a prayer from our chaplain, Mark Falls. Thank you all to the alumni who came on board tonight. It's wonderful having you here.